Hello BookTube, I'm back with a library tour, or shelf tour actually, but it's a library books about libraries, books about books, books about libraries. And we'll see how far we can get. I have them sort of split up into sort of institutional libraries, university, public, and then private libraries. Sort of. There's a method to the madness in a way, depending on whether I expand or more. So I have areas, so I know where to put stuff. This is the first one here. Is a remainder book that I bought several years ago. It's Library, An Unquiet History by Matthew Battles. It's a William Heinemann, 2003. I read this when I got it. Must be about 9 years ago. And it was in storage for a couple years before I moved in here. And I don't know if that's where the pages started yellowing. Because, yeah, it's just a little disquieting to know that they have started to darken. Just trying to get these back in here. Another one here, Books on Fire. The tumultuous story of the world's great libraries, Thames and Hudson. I got this about a year ago as another remainder. It's written by Lucien X. Polistron, translated from the French by John E. Graham. And it was published in 2007. Not ready yet. This is, as usual, the Cambridge history of libraries in Britain and Ireland, Volume 1 to 1640. So from earliest times to 1640. Edited by Elizabeth Ledham Green and Teresa Weber. It's the usual format for the Cambridge Ancient Histories. General editor for the whole series, and then an editor for each book. And each chapter or sub-chapters are more or less essays written by sometimes the same scholar, but usually a collection of scholars, different ones for each chapter. And I've started to read it, so I'm a long, slow read with this. And the book 7-volume one as well, once I complete that. So Volume 2 is 1640 to 1850. It's edited by Giles Mandelbrot and K.A. Manley. And they're all published in 2006. Volume 3, which is a bit bigger. It is 1850 to 2000. Edited by Alistair Black and Peter Hoare. And yeah, I haven't got... Well, I've looked at little bits and pieces of this. I bought these as remainders as well. They were already discounted, but then there was the last copy they had, and they were even damaged a little further, so I got even a further reduction. But the damage was minor. Now, here's 2 volumes by Raymond Irwin. The Origins of the English Library. It's George Allen and Unwin, publisher. And it says here, Raymond Irwin, Professor of Library Studies in the University of London, Director of the School of Librarianship and Archives, University College London. And it says, in this new book, Professor Irwin studies the background against which our libraries have developed since classical times, and the part they have played in building up our present culture, which depends so essentially on the art of reading and writing and the habit of collecting and preserving books. And yeah, again, I haven't got to these. I picked them up. And the one thing I've noticed, like even just organizing this library section, a lot of it I haven't read, which is sort of remiss of me. Because like the collecting one, I would say I've read majority of them, but the library ones, it's the majority that I haven't read, so I'm going to have to rectify that. But this is sort of as part 2, Raymond Irwin's The Heritage of the English Library. And he says he continues his studies of the history of libraries, which he began 6 years ago in the origin of the English library. His particular interests are in the social and intellectual background against which libraries have prospered, the roots in the classical and medieval periods from which they have sprung, the continuity of the library tradition from Aristotle to the present day. It just goes on. So this was 1964, George Allen and Unwin. I don't think I gave you a year for the first volume. 1958. This one is more general. Of the public libraries, history of public libraries in Great Britain, 1845 to 1975, by Thomas Kelly. And it's a bit damaged, but it wasn't too expensive. 1977, the Library Association. And Thomas Kelly, it says here, is Emeritus Professor of Adult Education at the University of Liverpool. And yeah, it's a history of public libraries in the UK, and it's got a bad damage up in the top corner here, if you can see. It's just an interesting thing. It's just an aside to say, when a book falls and if it hits like that on the floor, or it's in a box and it gets banged and through a poster and like that, it's interesting how the force of that, it may not damage the boards these are damaged a bit, but it doesn't necessarily have to damage them badly, but this one is. And you can see the force of it that has just been transferred right into the text block. And it's another thing that a lot of booksellers do not mention, which does bug me. At least with that, I saw it when I went to pick it up and bought it. So I made the choice whether to get it. So, but here's another one on the Library of the British Museum. Now, it's now the British Library. It's been moved for the British Museum, but this is, this is in a few years' time, the former library departments of the British Museum will have moved from the building which has influenced their development for the past 160 years to be housed in the new British Library building at St. Pancras. Which is a massive building, and I forget how many floors down underground. It's the deepest basements in London, I believe, and then they have off-site storage as well. But yeah, this is a history of the British Museum Library, or the early history of the British Library. It's edited by P.R. Harris. It's retrospective essays on the Department of Printed Books. British Library, 1991. Now, here's another little one that's on the same topic to a certain extent. It's the catalogue of printed books of the British Museum. It's 150 years of the general catalogue, and it has its own story. They had to build it from scratch, basically, and by its principal keeper of printed books, 66 to 70, was A.H. Chaplin. And this is Scholar Press, 1987. Again, look at most of these. I've just perused, read sections, and not a lot. Here's one that I do want to get to reading, and I would like to actually get another copy with the dust jacket for some reason. Now, this sort of confused me a little bit, because it must be a reprint. Yeah, it's a reprint, so I'd like to even get a newer one. But it's Annals of the Bodleian Library, Oxford, with a notice of the earlier library of the university by the Reverend William Dunn McCrae. It's the second edition, enlarged, continued from 1868 to 1880 at the Clarendon Press. It's was published originally in 1890, I guess, yeah. But yeah, don't know when this edition was published. It doesn't. I'm just a little confused with this. I don't know the history of the book. I don't know it that well, so I do apologize. And here's a short catalog of the printed books in England and English books printed abroad before 1641 in the Library of Wadham College, Oxford, compiled by H.A. Wheeler, 1918, with a biographical introduction by J.C. Squire, and Longman's Green, 1929, and it's got a bit of an introduction, but it's just literally a listing of their books. It's more of a bibliography than anything, but it's just a short catalog of what's in their library. And again, like, that was £1, so I couldn't pass it up. Now here's two books that I do want to get sunk into at some point. Is the Cambridge University, History of the Cambridge University Library. It's a history from the beginning to the Copyright Act of Queen Anne. That's the first volume by J.C.T. Oates. And Cambridge University Press, 1986. And volume 2. They're a bit cocked. I've got to get those sorted. This is by David McKitterick, the second volume. We've seen him already in the history of the book, and a specific volume on rare books. And this is Cambridge University Press, 1986 as well. And I do want to get to these. And this one is just the 18th and 19th centuries. And I bought these with a set. Well, there's a history of Cambridge. I think it's Cambridge University or just Cambridge. I can't remember now. I've got it in the other room. But there's one volume missing. They had the same dust jackets, so I think it was thought that it was all one set, and there's a volume missing. Hence, I got it at a very knockdown price. This is a history. First 150 Years of Trinity College Library by Philip Gaskell. And it's Cambridge University Press, 1980. And yeah, just Trinity College Library. The other set we have seen before, so I won't go into huge amounts of detail. Let me pull them out here. It's 5 volumes, and I got them for £10, which I thought was a good price because don't know how popular they are. I never looked them up to see. They were cancelled and from the Library of Queen's College, Oxford. But what they are is basically it's the catalogue of exhibitions at the John Rylands Library in Manchester. And they're bound, and they have a little bit of the history, some history, and a few other odds and ends. But it's mostly just a detailed listing of the books, the bibliographical information, and any other information of what was in case whatever that they had out in the exhibition. But you can see it's been given for the trustees of the Rylands Library, and there's that book plate in every single one. And so I don't know if they're sort of limited. Well, the pamphlets, the booklets would have been, there's probably them out there, but whether or not they were bound up like this and sold in general, I'm not sure. I kind of doubt it. And it does say that it's compliments of the librarian, and one of them is, yeah, there it is, with the compliments of the librarian. And it goes from 1904 to 1916, and it's just all their exhibitions, and a lot of it's got to do with the Bibles that they had, other printed books. So it just goes on. Each volume, very similar. This is like the tricentenary of the authorized version of the Bible, AD 1611 to 1911. very specialist in some ways, but I find it very fun. Like, I've sat here just going through these and reading like the contents of the library and reading the descriptions of some of the books. Sort of try to recreate in my mind how they had it in the exhibition. And this is the last one, Shakespeare Tricentenary in 1916 catalog exhibitions. No idea if they continued. I have not pursued this at all. But I was happy to get them. This year is a sort of memoir, in a sense, Recollections of a Westminster Antiquary, Laurence Tanner, who was a librarian at Westminster Abbey, 1926 to 66 by the looks of it. It looks like they made major spelling mistake on the title page. It says Keeper of the Monuments. I think they should have meant monuments. So, but yeah, I haven't read this really much at all. It looks like it's a bit of an autobiography memoir of his life. And a librarian, so that fits into here. Let's see, what else do we got? Jerusalem, City of the Book, History of Libraries in Jerusalem. I saw this on Steve Donahue's channel, probably last year, beginning last year, early or late 2019, because this was published in 2018, late 2018 or early 2019. And I thought, I would keep an eye out on this. I put it in my basket on Amazon, and then scanning through, I noticed they had one of these weird things where they really dropped the price dramatically. So I thought, yes, I'll get that now. And it's Yale University Press, written by, separate the pages here, City of the Book, Mirav Mack and Benjamin Ballant, with photographs by Frederick Brenner, and it's Yale University Press, 2019, and yes, nice colored photos of the libraries and some of the books. So that was nice. I'll have to set that there because I have trouble reaching stuff now. Now we go into sort of more private ones. This is fantastic. I've been reading through this. It's the Country House Library by Mark Purcell. And it's basically its first study, apparently, of country house libraries, of libraries and houses, because there's one thing that I always wondered of, getting books about houses and country houses, and they never really talk about anything about the library. They go into about, the furniture and all this kind of stuff that filled the house. Nothing usually about the library. Just saying, library. Let's move on. Yale University Press, published for the National Trust, 2017, and the author was basically, what does it say here? He's Deputy Director of Cambridge University Library and was the library's curator to the National Trust from 1999 to 2015. So he had direct access to all the National Trust libraries and houses. So he was eminently placed to write something like this. Here is the Library of Robert Burton. It's just a listing of his library by Nicholas Kisling, K. Kisling, Oxford Bibliographical Society, 1988, and it's got an introduction about his library, and then a listing of all the books that are in the library that he had. So, a bit of dry reading, but it's interesting nonetheless. Let's continue on here. The Catalog of Shipwrecked Books. Young Columbus and the Quest for a Universal Library. Edward Wilson Lee. When I heard of this, I thought it was cool. It was Christopher Columbus' son who decided to collect every book that there was, pamphlet, you name it, everything there was, and create a catalog for it all, because it was apparently the first time that was done. And this book is a bit of a mishmash of biographical of young Columbus, Christopher Columbus' son, with stuff about Christopher Columbus as well, mixed in through there, and a little bit about the library. And then it sort of leaves off. It's like basically the library was put into an attic somewhere, and there's no pictures of the books. There's no pictures of it. What is happening to the library now? It seems to have, like, a lot of it's been destroyed when the roof began leaking of this abbey or church in the attic, and then stuff was taken away. It just, it was. I was a bit disappointed from what I was expecting from it, really. And here we go is some sort of later ones. There was a whole bunch of these that people wrote, and it's like basically an English library, a bookman's guide by F. Seymour Smith. And this was done in 1964. Originally, I think it was 64. I thought it was an earlier thing, but it's basically what somebody should have in their library. And it was Readers Union Andre Deutsch, 1964, so it's cheap it must have been printed. It's Readers Union. Doesn't give the original date, because I thought for some reason it was 40s. Maybe I gleaned that from the introduction. And it's just a listing of books, what you should have under different topics like fiction and so forth. And you can see some of the previous owners. I'm assuming the ticks means that he has those books, and somebody who had this was going through and trying to create a library from that. And I think these are the last two here, yeah. And here's another one: How to Form a Library. It's those nice books that I like, the little ones with the medallion on, by H.B. Wheatley, Elliot Stock, 1886, and it's from a series called Book Lovers Library, and it just talks about, it's sort of a history of book collecting as well, to a certain extent, how libraries are, like how to form a library, how you go about buying, and then there is a listing in the back of some book, 100 books to start your library with, classical books going into Shakespeare and so forth, and some modern novels of the time: Austen, Thackeray, Dickens, George Eliot, Kingsley, Bulwer Lytton, and Scott's novels. So that I have read, and it's quite interesting. It's amazing how it's continuing to cock the spine off to correct that. And one I recently got is Arnold Bennett's Literary Taste, which is quite interesting. He goes into the aim, particular case, the classic, why is a classic, and where to begin, and so on. And then he does give a listing of books that you should have in a library under every like verse, and yeah. Then he gives prices for stuff, how much to build things. So that's quite interesting. But anyway, so now I have a few stragglers. There's a few books here on sort of paper. There's 4 or 5 books. But sort of we've done, now what do we got? We got a section on reading, sort of. It's like I got books about reading, and how the reading has been done throughout history, how people read. So I thought I'd separate that. That's sort of the next one now. And then after that is printers, specific printing presses, and booksellers. That's probably 2 videos in itself. And then that is it. To a certain extent. There's more stuff over here, but they're different. They are spread into sort of areas, not areas, but time periods, and more studies of books and authors of the time period, and then it blends into the history of literature. So those have been separated, but there might be a few misplaced items in there. But yeah, so the order that I have here now is we have this, which is the libraries, then it goes into the printers and booksellers, and then it goes, it goes into reading next, and then booksellers. But I think I'm going to do booksellers first, and then reading, and then the collecting books, but I've already done that. So anyway, I'm going to mix up a few things a little bit, but it's really been useful doing this because it's clarified what order I want the books in and how I can expand and what I need to read as well, like most of my library books here, which I haven't read. But I'm going to end it there because it'll be soon cutting off. Anyway, take care, Book 2. I'll see you later. Bye.